The golden halls of the Zephyrian royal palace gleamed under the twin suns of Kepler 442b, their crystalline walls reflecting the elegant movements of Ambassador Lirley as she glided through the corridors. Her silver-blue skin shimmered with the natural bioluminescence of her people, and her forearms moved in graceful harmony as she reviewed the diplomatic documents on her neural interface. Today marked the final day of the most crucial trade negotiations in galactic history. Marcus Chun adjusted his tool belt and wiped the sweat from his forehead as he emerged from the palace's maintenance tunnels. The human engineer had been working on the climate control systems for 3 straight days, ensuring everything ran perfectly for the historic summit. His brown coveralls bore the insignia of the Terran Engineering Corps, and his calloused hands spoke of years spent fixing things that others deemed impossible to repair. The Zephyrian-Terran trade agreement would open up resource sharing between 12 different species across 4 star systems. For Ambassador Lirley, this represented the culmination of her life's work. Her people, the Zephyrians, possessed advanced biotechnology that could revolutionize medicine across the galaxy, while the humans offered their unmatched engineering capabilities and their strange ability to find solutions where others saw only problems. As Marcus made his way through the service corridors, he couldn't help but overhear fragments of conversation from the main halls. The other species delegates spoke in hushed tones about humanity's recent inclusion in galactic politics. Many still viewed humans as newcomers barely a century out from their first contact with alien civilization. The Vrex delegation, in particular, seemed skeptical of human capabilities, their reptilian features twisted in perpetual disapproval whenever Earth's representative spoke. Ambassador Lirley paused at the viewing gallery overlooking the palace gardens, where representatives from various species mingled during the afternoon recess. Her aide, a young Zephyrian named Kithara, approached with obvious concern etched across her features. The bioluminescent patterns on her skin pulsed with anxiety, a clear sign to anyone familiar with Zephyrian biology that something was terribly wrong. Marcus finished his inspection of the atmospheric processors and began his routine check of the security systems. His engineering background had taught him to pay attention to details others missed, and something about the palace's energy readings seemed off. The power consumption patterns showed irregularities that didn't match normal operations, and several security nodes were drawing more energy than they should. In the diplomatic quarters, Ambassador Lirley reviewed the final treaty terms with her senior staff. The agreement would establish humanity as a key partner in galactic trade, something that made several older species uncomfortable. The Hegemony Council had ruled the galaxy for millennia, and the rapid rise of human influence challenged their traditional power structure. Some council members had made their displeasure known through diplomatic channels, but Lirley believed in the treaty's importance for galactic prosperity. The palace guards, elite Zephyrian warriors in ceremonial armor, maintained their posts throughout the complex. Their leader, Captain Zethros, had served the royal family for decades and commanded absolute respect among his troops. However, unbeknownst to Ambassador Lirley, Zethros had been approached by representatives of the old guard who opposed human integration into galactic society. They offered him wealth beyond imagination and promised his people favorable treatment in future negotiations. Marcus discovered the source of the energy anomalies while tracing power lines through the lower levels. Someone had installed unauthorized devices throughout the security network, sophisticated pieces of technology that appeared designed to override safety protocols and communication systems. The craftsmanship suggested Zephyrian origin, but the energy signatures were all wrong. These devices could potentially shut down the entire palace defense grid with a single command. As evening approached, Ambassador Lirley prepared for the signing ceremony that would take place the following morning. She wore traditional Zephyrian diplomatic robes, their shifting colors representing her people's hopes for peace and prosperity. The weight of responsibility sat heavily on her shoulders as she realized that millions of beings across the galaxy would be affected by tomorrow's events. The human engineering team had been scheduled to depart after completing their maintenance work, but Marcus felt compelled to investigate the security anomalies further. His curiosity, a trait that had gotten him into trouble many times before, wouldn't let him ignore what he'd discovered. He began tracing the unauthorized modifications. Following their connections through the palace's vast network of conduits and accessways, Captain Zethros gathered his most trusted lieutenants in a secluded chamber deep within the palace. The gold they'd been promised would secure their families' futures for generations, and the political changes would benefit their species at humanity's expense. The plan was simple. During the signing ceremony, they would claim that human saboteurs had infiltrated the palace security systems, justifying the immediate arrest of all human delegates and the cancellation of the treaty. Ambassador Lirelei stood on her private balcony, gazing up at the star-filled sky where her people's colony ships had once traveled between worlds. She thought about the ancestors who had dreamed of a united galaxy, where different species could work together instead of competing for resources. The humans, despite their relative technological infancy, had shown remarkable aptitude for cooperation and problem-solving that reminded her why this treaty mattered so much. Marcus finally traced the unauthorized devices to their control hub, hidden behind a false wall in the security center's basement. The sophisticated setup could override every defensive system in the palace simultaneously, leaving Ambassador Lirelei and the human delegation completely vulnerable. Worse yet, the system appeared designed to frame humans for the security breach, using modified Terran components that would implicate Earth's engineering cores in an act of sabotage. As the palace settled into its nighttime routine, none of the sleeping delegates realized that tomorrow's ceremony would become a trap. The pieces were in place, the conspirators ready to act, and the future of galactic cooperation hung in the balance. Only one human engineer, working alone in the darkness below, stood between Ambassador Lirelei and a betrayal that would shatter the fragile hope for peace between the stars. The first rays of dawn painted the palace walls in shades of amber and gold as Ambassador Lirelei began her morning meditation. The signing ceremony was only hours away, as she could feel the weight of history pressing down upon her shoulders. Her people had dreamed of this day for generations, when the galaxy would finally unite under principles of mutual cooperation rather than the old ways of conquest and domination. Marcus hadn't slept all night. He'd spent the dark hours carefully documenting the sabotage network he'd discovered, taking detailed scans and recordings that would prove human innocence when the conspiracy inevitably unfolded. The engineering in the unauthorized devices was masterful, designed to appear as though human technology had been corrupted for malicious purposes. Whoever planned this understood both Zephyrian and Terran systems well enough to create convincing false evidence. Captain Zethros stood before his assembled guards in the armory, their ceremonial weapons gleaming under the artificial lights. Today, these weapons would serve a different purpose than protection. The captain's speech was carefully crafted, painting humans as a threat to galactic stability who had somehow infiltrated their security systems. His words carried the authority of decades of loyal service, making his betrayal all the more devastating. In the diplomatic wing, the human delegation prepared for what they believed would be their greatest triumph. Ambassador Sarah Martinez, Earth's chief negotiator, reviewed her speech one final time while her security detail performed their morning equipment checks. The humans had no idea that their presence had been systematically compromised, their every move monitored and recorded to support the coming accusations of sabotage. Marcus made his way through the service tunnels toward the main palace, carrying a portable scanner that revealed the full extent of the conspiracy. The network of unauthorized devices stretched throughout the entire complex, positioned to disable communications, override door locks, and cut power to critical systems. The timing would be perfect, striking just as the ceremony reached its climactic moment. Ambassador Lirelei walked through the palace gardens with her aide Kithara, enjoying the peaceful morning before the chaos of the ceremony began. The younger Zephyrienne seemed nervous, her bioluminescent patterns flickering with barely contained anxiety. When Lirelei asked about her concerns, Kithara mentioned overhearing strange conversations among the guard staff, but couldn't provide specific details that would raise Serious alarm. The grand ceremonial hall buzzed with activity as staff members made final preparations for the historic signing. Representatives from 12 different species would witness the moment when humanity officially joined the galactic community as an equal partner. The symbolism was powerful, demonstrating that advancement and cooperation mattered more than age or tradition in determining a species' place among the stars. Marcus reached a critical decision point as he studied the sabotage network's activation protocols. The system could be triggered remotely, but it also had several manual override points that could prevent the conspiracy from succeeding. However, accessing these points would require him to move through areas where he had no official authorization to be present. Getting caught would only strengthen the false accusations against humanity. Captain Jethros received final confirmation from his off-world contacts that everything was in place for the operation. The evidence implicating humans had been carefully planted throughout the palace systems, and the media outlets across the galaxy were prepared to broadcast news of humanity's treachery. The captain's reputation for integrity would lend credibility to the accusations, making them nearly impossible to refute in the chaos that would follow. In her private chambers, Ambassador Lirelei donned the ceremonial robes that had been worn by Zephyrian diplomats for centuries during moments of historic importance. The fabric seemed to shimmer with the hopes and dreams of her people, carrying the weight of countless generations who had worked toward this day. She thought about her grandmother, who had first proposed the idea of including humans in galactic affairs, despite fierce opposition from traditional council members. Marcus began his dangerous journey through the palace's restricted areas, using his engineering knowledge to avoid security sensors and patrols. His portable tools allowed him to access maintenance shafts and utility corridors that others couldn't navigate, giving him unique insight into the building's hidden infrastructure. The conspiracy's planners had clearly underestimated human adaptability and resourcefulness. The morning briefing for security personnel contained subtle modifications that Captain Zethros had introduced over the past few days. Guard positions were shifted slightly, creating blind spots in coverage that would be blamed on human infiltrators. Communication protocols were altered to delay response times, and several veteran guards who might question unusual orders were assigned to distant posts away from the main ceremony. Ambassador Lirelei's breakfast meeting with the human delegation went smoothly, with both sides expressing optimism about the treaty's potential impact. Ambassador Martinez spoke passionately about humanity's commitment to peaceful cooperation, unknowingly making statements that would later be twisted into evidence of duplicity. The conversation was recorded by hidden devices that would broadcast selective excerpts to support the conspiracy's narrative. As the morning progressed, Marcus discovered that the sabotage network was even more sophisticated than he'd initially realized. The system included psychological warfare components designed to create maximum confusion and fear during the crisis. Holographic projectors would display false images of human soldiers attacking Zephyrian civilians, while audio systems would broadcast fabricated communications between supposed human operatives coordinating the assault. The palace staff completed final preparations for the ceremony, unaware that many of their routine activities were being monitored and potentially manipulated by the hidden conspiracy. Catering staff, maintenance workers, and security personnel all played unwitting roles in the elaborate deception that would soon unfold. The planners had spent months studying every aspect of palace operations to ensure their false flag operation would appear authentic. Captain Zethros conducted a final inspection of his guards, noting with satisfaction that his most loyal supporters were positioned at key locations throughout the ceremonial hall. These individuals had been carefully selected and indoctrinated over months of private meetings, their loyalty secured through a combination of financial incentives and appeals to species pride. They would follow his orders without question when the moment arrived. Ambassador Lirelei took one last look at the treaty documents that represented years of painstaking negotiation. Every clause had been debated, revised, and refined to ensure fairness for all participating species. The agreement represented a new paradigm in galactic relations, one where cooperation and mutual benefit replaced the old systems of domination and exploitation. In just a few hours, this dream would either become reality or die in a wave of manufactured outrage. Marcus reached the main security hub and began the delicate process of accessing the sabotage network's control systems. One wrong move would trigger the entire conspiracy prematurely, while failure to act would allow the plot to proceed as planned. The fate of galactic peace now rested in the hands of a single human engineer who refused to let injustice triumph over truth. The ceremonial hall gleamed with polished marble and crystalline formations that had taken Zephyrian artisans decades to perfect. Representatives from across the galaxy began filing into their designated seats, their diverse forms creating a spectacular display of galactic unity. The Vrex delegations slithered into position with their reptilian grace, while the gaseous nebulari floated in specialized containment suits that allowed them to participate in solid matter environments. Marcus worked frantically in the security hub's basement, his hands moving across control interfaces that hummed with alien technology. The sabotage network's activation countdown showed less than 2 hours remaining before the conspiracy would trigger automatically. Every device he discovered was linked to this central hub, and disabling it would require him to simultaneously access multiple security protocols that were never meant to be overridden by a single individual. Ambassador Lirelei entered the Grand Hall wearing the ceremonial crown of diplomatic unity, a stunning piece crafted from materials donated by each member species of the Galactic Council. The crown's weight reminded her of the responsibility she bore, not just to her own people, but to every being who dreamed of a more cooperative future. The human delegation was already seated in the place of honor. Their faces bright with anticipation, Captain Zethros moved through the hall with practiced efficiency, positioning his guards according to the modified security plan that would soon prove so convenient for the conspiracy's needs. His expression remained professionally neutral, but inside he felt the bitter satisfaction of someone about to witness the downfall of those he perceived as upstart threats to galactic order. The humans had advanced too far, too fast, and needed to be reminded of their proper place. The opening ceremonies began with traditional songs from each participating species, their melodies blending into a harmony that symbolized the cooperation the treaty represented. The Zephyrian choir's bioluminescent patterns pulsed in rhythm, with their voices creating a visual symphony that brought tears to many observers' eyes. Even the typically stoic Vrex delegation seemed moved by the display of artistic unity. Marcus discovered that the sabotage network included a particularly insidious component designed to target Ambassador Lirelei specifically. Hidden weapons. Systems would activate during the signing ceremony, making it appear that human security personnel were attempting to assassinate the Zephyrian leader. The psychological impact of such an attack would poison diplomatic relations for generations. Exactly what the conspiracy's backers desired, Ambassador Martinez rose to deliver humanity's formal acceptance speech, her words carefully chosen to emphasize cooperation and mutual respect. She spoke of Earth's journey from an isolated world to a participant in galactic civilization, crediting the guidance and patience of species like the Zephyrians for humanity's rapid advancement. Her sincerity was evident to everyone present, making the coming betrayal all the more tragic. The ceremony's first phase concluded with the ritual exchange of gifts between species representatives, each item carrying deep cultural significance. The humans presented a collection of Earth's greatest musical compositions, encoded in crystalline matrices that could be appreciated by any species capable of perceiving harmonic vibrations. In return, they received biotechnological samples that could revolutionize medicine and agriculture. Across human space. Marcus realized that time was running out as the sabotage network's countdown entered its final 90 minutes. His engineering experience told him that attempting to disable the entire system at once would likely trigger security protocols that would lock him out permanently. Instead, he would need to carefully isolate and neutralize each component in sequence, a process that normally required a full technical team working in coordination. Captain Zethros received a subtle signal from his off-world contacts confirming that galactic media outlets were prepared to broadcast news of humanity's treachery within minutes of the conspiracy's activation. The carefully orchestrated campaign would paint humans as aggressive expansionists who had infiltrated Zephyrian society through false promises of friendship. Public opinion would turn against Earth so completely that diplomatic recovery would be impossible. The second phase of the ceremony began with Ambassador Liralay's formal presentation of the treaty terms to the assembled delegates. Each clause was read aloud in the common galactic language, with simultaneous translation provided for species, whose communication methods differed from standard protocols. The thoroughness of the process reflected the treaty's importance and the desire to ensure complete transparency in its implementation. Marcus accessed the first layer of the sabotage, network security, and began the delicate process of neutralizing the hidden weapon systems. The technology was incredibly sophisticated, using adaptive protocols that could respond to tampering attempts by shifting their operational parameters. Every action he took triggered countermeasures that required increasingly creative solutions to overcome. The cultural exchange portion of the ceremony showcased the diversity and richness of galactic civilization, with each species presenting artistic or technological achievements that demonstrated their unique contributions to the cosmic community. The humans shared recordings of Earth's natural environments, from ocean depths to mountain peaks, revealing the remarkable biodiversity of their homeworld that had shaped their perspective on cooperation and adaptation. Ambassador Liralay watched the proceedings with growing emotion, seeing in this gathering the fulfillment of her life's greatest ambitions. The treaty represented more than just trade agreements and political alliances. It symbolized the possibility of a future where differences were celebrated rather than feared. The humans had proven themselves worthy partners through their actions, not just their words, and deserved full recognition as equals in galactic society. The hidden conspiracy's psychological warfare components activated their preliminary phases, beginning subtle manipulations of the Hall's environmental systems designed to increase stress and anxiety among the attendees. The temperature fluctuations and audio distortions were almost imperceptible, but they created an underlying sense of unease that would make the coming crisis seem more believable and terrifying. Marcus successfully disabled the first cluster of weapon systems, but the effort required him to reroute power through circuits that were never designed for such loads. Sparks flew from overloaded conduits as he pushed the palace's infrastructure beyond safe operational limits. The risk of detection was increasing with every modification he made, but stopping now would doom both Ambassador Liralay and the future of galactic cooperation. Captain Zethros moved closer to the ceremonial platform where the treaty signing would take place, positioning himself perfectly to coordinate the conspiracy's final phase. His hand rested casually on his weapon, ready to draw and fire at the first sign of the planned human aggression. The other guards in his inner circle had received their final instructions and knew exactly what roles they would play in the manufactured crisis. As the ceremony entered its final phase before the actual signing, Marcus faced his greatest challenge yet. The sabotage network's core control system was protected by quantum encryption. That would normally require specialized equipment and days of computation to crack. However, his years of experience with hybrid human-alien technology had taught him to think creatively about seemingly impossible problems. Sometimes the most elegant solutions were also the most unexpected ones. The quantum encryption protecting the sabotage network's core systems pulsed with alien mathematics that would have baffled most engineers. But Marcus had spent years working alongside Zephyrian technicians and had learned to think in their logical patterns. Instead of trying to break the encryption directly, he began looking for the human-designed components that had been integrated into the system. The conspirators' need to frame humanity had created a weakness in their otherwise perfect plan. Ambassador Liralay approached the ceremonial table, where the treaty documents awaited her signature, their golden pages inscribed with text in 12 different languages and symbolic systems. Each delegate would add their mark in traditional fashion, creating a document that would be preserved in the galactic archives for millennia to come. The weight of the moment pressed upon everyone present as they realized they were witnessing the dawn of a new era in cosmic relations. Captain Zethros checked his chronometer and noted that less than 30 minutes remained before the sabotage network would activate automatically. His team of compromised guards had taken their final positions around the ceremonial hall, ready to respond with lethal force when the manufactured crisis began. The captain's breathing remained steady, but his grip on his weapon had tightened as the moment of truth approached. The first delegate to sign was Ambassador Thixel of the ancient Vrex Empire, whose species had ruled vast sectors of the galaxy for over 10,000 years. The reptilian leader's signature carried the weight of millennia of tradition, and his participation in the ceremony represented a grudging acknowledgement that even the oldest civilizations could benefit from cooperation with younger species like humanity. Marcus discovered that the human components in the sabotage network were actually modified Terran engineering tools that had been stolen from supply shipments and repurposed for malicious use. The irony wasn't lost on him as he realized that his own people's technology was being used to destroy their reputation. However, this also meant he understood these systems better than their current operators, giving him an advantage the conspirators hadn't anticipated. The signing ceremony's musical accompaniment shifted to a piece composed specifically for this occasion by artists from multiple species working in collaboration. The haunting melodies seemed to speak of hope and possibility, their harmonies representing the potential for different civilizations to create something greater together than they could achieve alone. Even the most skeptical observers found themselves moved by the emotional power of the performance. Ambassador Martinez prepared to add humanity's signature to the historic document, her hands steady despite the magnitude of the moment. The pen she would use contained metal from Earth's moon and crystalline components from the Zephyrian homeworld, symbolizing the literal fusion of human and alien materials into something new and precious. Her signature would officially welcome humanity into the galactic community as an equal partner. Marcus worked with desperate precision to isolate the stolen Terran components from the larger sabotage network, using diagnostic codes that only human engineers would know. The systems responded to his commands like familiar tools, allowing him to gradually gain control over the conspiracy's most dangerous elements. However, each successful intervention triggered automatic alerts that brought him closer to discovery. The ceremonial hall's atmosphere grew more tense as the environmental manipulation systems reached their peak effectiveness, flooding the air with stress-inducing pheromones and subliminal audio frequencies. The assembled delegates began to show signs of unease, their conversations becoming more subdued and their movements more cautious. The conspiracy's planners had studied crowd psychology extensively to create optimal conditions for panic and confusion. Captain Zethros received a coded message from his off-world contacts confirming that galactic news networks were standing by to broadcast their prepared stories about human treachery. The narrative was already written, complete with expert commentary and historical analysis that would paint Earth as a dangerous aggressor that had infiltrated peaceful Zephyrian society through deception and false friendship. Ambassador Lirelay took the ceremonial pen from its place of honor and approached the treaty documents with measured steps. Each movement was carefully choreographed according to ancient Zephyrian diplomatic traditions, her grace and dignity lending additional solemnity to the proceedings. The silence in the great hall was profound, as beings from across the galaxy held their breath in anticipation. Marcus finally cracked a quantum encryption by using the stolen Terran components as a backdoor into the larger system, a solution that was both elegant and poetic in its justice. The sabotage network's control interface opened before him like a flower blooming in fast motion, revealing the full scope of the conspiracy's sophisticated planning. Every detail had been considered, every contingency planned for, except the possibility that a single human engineer would refuse to let injustice prevail. The hidden weapons systems completed their targeting protocols and prepared to fire upon Ambassador Lirelay the moment her signature touched the treaty document. The timing would create maximum psychological impact, making it appear that humanity had waited until the most sacred moment of the ceremony to reveal their true aggressive nature. The wounded or killed ambassador would become a martyr for those who opposed human integration into galactic society. Ambassador. Liralay's pen touched the golden parchment as she began to inscribe her name in the flowing script of her people, each character representing not just letters but concepts of hope, cooperation, and mutual respect. The other delegates leaned forward in their seats, understanding that this moment would be remembered as a turning point in galactic history. The ancient barriers between species were finally beginning to crumble. Marcus's fingers flew across the control interface as he raced against time to disable the weapons targeting Ambassador Liralay. The quantum processors running the sabotage network were incredibly fast, but human intuition and creativity allowed him to anticipate their responses and stay one step ahead of their adaptive protocols. Every second brought the conspiracy's activation closer, but also brought him nearer to complete victory over the hidden threat. Captain Zithros drew his weapon and prepared to coordinate the false flag operation that would destroy human-Zephyrian relations forever. His signal would activate not just the physical weapons aimed at Ambassador Liralay, but also the psychological warfare components designed to create maximum chaos and confusion. In the aftermath, his heroic intervention to stop the supposed human attack would position him as a savior of galactic peace. The moment arrived as Ambassador Liralay completed the first stroke of her signature, the golden ink seeming to glow with inner fire as it touched the ancient parchment. Time seemed suspended as Marcus fought to disable the final targeting system while Captain Zithros raised his weapon to begin the conspiracy that would shatter the peace. The future of galactic cooperation hung in the balance, dependent on whether human determination could triumph over alien treachery in the seconds that remained. Marcus slammed his fist down on the emergency shutdown sequence just as the hidden weapons systems reached full charge, their targeting lasers painting deadly red dots across Ambassador Liralay's ceremonial robes. The stolen Terran components responded to his override codes with mechanical precision, causing the entire sabotage network to collapse in a cascade of system failures that sent sparks flying throughout the palace's hidden infrastructure. Captain Zithros felt his weapon grow suddenly heavy in his hands as he watched the conspiracy unravel before his eyes. The carefully coordinated plan that had taken months to arrange was falling apart in real time, leaving him standing exposed, with his sidearm drawn while Ambassador Liralay continued signing the treaty in blissful ignorance of the danger that had just passed. His off-world contacts would not be pleased with this unexpected development. The emergency shutdown triggered alarms throughout the palace's security systems, but the warnings were buried beneath layers of false alerts generated by the conspiracy's earlier manipulations. Palace staff rushed to respond to reports of power fluctuations and system malfunctions, while the signing ceremony continued uninterrupted in the grand hall above. Only Marcus knew that the crisis had been artificial from the beginning. Ambassador Liralay completed her signature with a flourish, the golden ink seeming to dance across the parchment as she added the final decorative elements traditional to Zephyrian diplomatic documents. The assembled delegates erupted in applause as she stepped back from the treaty table, their joy genuine and infectious despite the subliminal stress factors that continued to affect the hall's atmosphere. Marcus emerged from the security hub's basement like a ghost materializing from shadow, his coveralls scorched and his face streaked with sweat and grime from hours of desperate work in the cramped maintenance tunnels. The portable scanner in his hands contained terabytes of evidence proving the conspiracy's existence, but he needed to reach someone in authority who would listen before Captain Zithros could implement whatever backup plan the traitors had prepared. The ceremonial proceedings moved to the next phase as Ambassador Martinez approached the treaty table to add humanity's official signature to the historic document. Her steps were measured and dignified, but those who knew her well could see the excitement dancing in her eyes as she prepared to complete humanity's official entry into the galactic community. The moment represented the culmination of decades of careful diplomacy and patient Relationship building. Captain Zethros quickly holstered his weapon and activated his emergency communicator, sending coded messages to his co-conspirators warning them that their primary plan had failed. The backup protocols were less sophisticated and carried greater risk of exposure, but they remained the only hope of preventing the treaty's completion. The captain's reputation for loyalty and integrity would provide cover for one final attempt at sabotage. The hidden psychological warfare systems continued their subtle manipulation of the Hall's environment, creating an underlying sense of tension that made even the most seasoned diplomats feel vaguely uneasy. The stress-inducing frequencies were designed to make rational thought more difficult and emotional responses more likely, setting the stage for maximum chaos when the backup crisis was triggered. Marcus spotted Ambassador Lirlei's aide Kithara near the ceremonial hall's entrance and made his way toward her with urgent purpose. The young Zephyrian's bioluminescent patterns were flickering with the anxiety she'd felt all morning, suggesting that her intuitive senses had detected the wrongness in the palace's atmosphere even without understanding its source. Her natural empathy made her an ideal ally for exposing the conspiracy. The treaty signing reached its climactic moment as each delegation's leader added their mark to the golden document, their signatures representing the hopes and dreams of billions of beings across the galaxy. The ancient Rex script flowed alongside modern Terran letters and flowing Zephyrian glyphs, creating a visual representation of unity that transcended species boundaries and cultural differences. Captain Zethros received confirmation from his contacts that the backup plan was ready for implementation, though it would require him to sacrifice his own reputation to succeed. The new strategy involved claiming that he had discovered evidence of human infiltration and was acting to prevent an imminent attack on Ambassador Lirelei. His word would carry enough weight to create doubt about humanity's intentions, even if the physical evidence was less compelling than originally planned. Marcus reached Kithara just as the final signatures were being added to the treaty, his urgent whispers causing her bioluminescent patterns to shift into configurations of alarm and disbelief. The evidence he showed her on his portable scanner painted a clear picture of betrayal and deception that made her gasp in horror. Her species' natural ability to sense emotional authenticity confirmed that the human engineer was telling the truth. The ceremony reached its conclusion as the completed treaty was elevated for all to see, its golden pages catching the light from the hall's crystal formations and casting rainbow patterns across the assembled delegates. The symbolism was powerful and moving, representing the dawn of a new era in which cooperation would replace competition as the driving force behind galactic civilization. Ambassador Martinez completed humanity's participation in the signing ceremony, her signature flowing across the document with the confidence of someone representing an entire species' commitment to peaceful cooperation. The assembled delegates rose in sustained applause, their various forms of expressing joy creating a cacophony of celebration that echoed through the palace's ancient halls. Captain Zethros made his move toward the ceremonial platform, his hand once again moving toward his weapon as he prepared to implement the desperate backup plan that would destroy his own career but might still accomplish the conspiracy's goals. His face was a mask of grim determination as he calculated the precise moment when his intervention would create maximum impact and confusion among the assembled delegates. Kithara's eyes widened in horror as she fully comprehended the scope of the betrayal Marcus had uncovered, her bioluminescent patterns shifting into configurations that her people reserved for moments of extreme crisis. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable, but acting on it would require her to publicly accuse Captain Zethros of treason against the very person he had sworn to protect. The weight of that accusation could destroy her own career and credibility if she was wrong. The treaty documents were secured in their ceremonial case as the formal proceedings drew to a close, but the celebration was far from over. The assembled delegates began moving toward the reception halls where they would continue their discussions. In a more relaxed atmosphere, unaware that the most dangerous moment of the entire summit was about to unfold. The conspiracy's backup plan required chaos and confusion to succeed, and Captain Zethros was prepared to provide both in abundance. Marcus felt time slipping away as he watched. Captain Zethros approaching the ceremonial platform with predatory intent. The evidence he gathered would prove humanity's innocence eventually, but only if Ambassador Lirley survived the next few minutes. The human engineer found himself facing a choice that would define not just his own future, but the relationship between species across the galaxy. Sometimes being human meant standing up for what was right, regardless of the personal cost. Marcus sprinted across the ceremonial hall with the desperate speed of someone racing against catastrophe, his engineer's mind calculating trajectories and timing as he watched Captain Zethros draw his weapon and aim it directly at Ambassador Lirley's back. The Zephyrian leader was still turned toward the assembled delegates, graciously acknowledging their applause, while completely unaware of the deadly threat approaching from behind. The assembled delegates gasped in confusion and horror as they witnessed the unprecedented sight of a palace guard drawing his weapon during a peace ceremony, their various species' expressions of shock creating a babel of sounds that echoed through the grand hall. Some began to flee toward the exits while others froze in place, uncertain whether they were witnessing a security response or an attack. Captain Zethros's finger tightened on the trigger as he prepared to fire the shot that would kill Ambassador Lirley and blame her death on human treachery. But his carefully planned execution was disrupted by the sight of a human engineer in scorched coveralls launching himself through the air with reckless abandon. The captain's weapon swung toward this new target. Recognizing the greater threat to his mission's success, Marcus collided with Ambassador Lirley just as the energy blast seared through the air where she had been standing, his momentum carrying both of them behind the ceremonial podium as the deadly beam struck the golden treaty case instead. The ancient document burst into flames, its destruction creating a powerful symbolic image that would be remembered long after the immediate crisis had passed. Kethera's voice rose above the chaos as she activated the hall's emergency communication systems, her bioluminescent patterns blazing with the urgent warnings of her people as she broadcast Marcus's evidence of the conspiracy to every screen and speaker in the palace. The proof of betrayal spread through the complex like wildfire, reaching loyal guards and palace staff, who had been unaware of their captain's treacherous intentions. Captain Zethros realized that his mission had failed completely as loyal guards began converging on his position, their weapons drawn and their faces filled with the righteous anger of those who had discovered betrayal in their ranks. The evidence of his conspiracy was now public knowledge, making any attempt at deception futile. His only hope lay in fighting his way to an escape route before justice could catch up with him. Ambassador Lirley struggled to comprehend what was happening as Marcus shielded her behind the podium, his human body positioned between her and the continuing energy blasts from Captain Zethros's weapon. The engineer's coveralls were smoking from near misses, but his determination never wavered as he protected someone he barely knew simply because it was the right thing to do. The backup guards loyal to Captain Zethros found themselves outnumbered and surrounded as palace security. Systems identified them as hostile threats based on the evidence Marcus had provided. Their weapons were disabled by remote override while emergency barriers sealed the hall's exits, trapping the conspirators inside with no possibility of escape. The carefully planned operation had become a disaster of epic proportions. Marcus felt the heat from another energy blast pass close enough to singe his hair as he pulled Ambassador Lirley deeper behind their makeshift cover, his engineering training allowing him to calculate the angles and trajectories that would keep them both alive. The irony wasn't lost on him that his technical knowledge was proving more valuable than any weapon in this desperate situation. The chaos in the ceremonial hall reached its peak as loyal guards engaged the remaining conspirators in brief but intense firefights, their energy weapons creating brilliant flashes of light that turned the elegant space into a war zone. The assembled delegates huddled behind whatever cover they could find, their diplomatic immunity meaningless in the face of actual violence. Captain Zethros made a desperate attempt to reach the emergency exit, his weapon firing indiscriminately at anyone who tried to block his path. The years of loyal service that had earned him trust and respect were forgotten in an instant as he revealed his true nature as a traitor willing to kill anyone who stood between him and escape. Ambassador Lireley found her voice despite the terror and confusion surrounding them, calling out to her people in the flowing tones of formal Zephyrian to cease the violence and restore order. Her natural authority carried even in crisis, causing some of the loyal guards to hesitate in their pursuit of the conspirators long enough to avoid unnecessary bloodshed. Marcus spotted an opportunity to end the crisis decisively when Captain Zethros paused to reload his weapon, leaving himself momentarily vulnerable. The human engineer's knowledge of the hall's layout from his maintenance work gave him an advantage that the captain couldn't anticipate, allowing him to predict the traitor's movements with deadly accuracy. The portable scanner, containing evidence of the conspiracy, had been damaged in the initial collision, but Kithara's quick thinking had already broadcast its contents throughout the palace network before the device could be destroyed. The proof of Captain Zithros's betrayal was now permanently recorded in multiple systems, making any attempt to deny or cover up the truth impossible. Ambassador Martinez and the human delegation found themselves trapped near the ceremonial table as energy blasts crisscrossed the hall around them, their diplomatic training having never prepared them for this kind of life-threatening situation. The irony that they were being protected by palace security, while being blamed for the attack, would have been amusing under different circumstances. Marcus made his move when Captain Zethros turned toward Ambassador Lireley for what was clearly intended to be a final, fatal shot. The human engineer launched himself from behind the podium with the desperate courage of someone who refused to let evil triumph over innocence, his body serving as a living shield against the forces of hatred and betrayal. The energy blast meant for Ambassador Lireley struck Marcus center mass, his body absorbing the full power of a weapon designed to kill Zephyrian physiology instantly. The human engineer collapsed to the marble floor, smoke rising from the impact site as he gasped for breath that might not come again. His sacrifice had bought precious seconds that loyal guards used to finally corner. Captain Zethros found himself surrounded by the very guards he had once commanded, their weapons trained on him with unwavering precision as the weight of his betrayal settled upon everyone present. The conspiracy that had taken months to plan and execute had been destroyed by the actions of a single human engineer who refused to stand aside while injustice prevailed. Ambassador Lireley knelt beside Marcus's fallen form, her four hands moving with medical precision as she assessed his injuries and began emergency treatment using techniques her people had developed over millennia of spacefaring civilization. The human who had saved her life was dying, but she refused to let his sacrifice be in vain. The treaty might have been destroyed, but the bonds of friendship it represented had been forged in something far stronger than ink and parchment. The advanced medical bay of the Zephyrian Royal Palace hummed with alien technology as Ambassador Lireley worked alongside the finest doctors in the galaxy to save Marcus's life. The energy weapon that had struck him was designed to disrupt Zephyrian nervous systems, but human physiology proved remarkably resilient in ways that surprised even the most experienced medical professionals. His heart continued beating through sheer stubborn determination, giving them time to apply treatments that shouldn't have been possible. Captain Zethros sat in detention awaiting trial for treason, his former supporters either dead or captured during the brief but intense firefight that had ended the conspiracy. The evidence Marcus had gathered proved conclusively that the betrayal reached far beyond the palace walls, involving corrupt officials and extremist groups across multiple star systems. The investigation would take months to complete, but the immediate threat had been neutralized. Ambassador Martinez stood vigil outside the medical bay alongside her Zephyrian counterpart, the two diplomats united by their shared concern for the human engineer, who had saved both their peoples from a catastrophic breakdown in relations. The treaty documents might have been destroyed, but the bonds forged in crisis were proving stronger than any written agreement could ever be. The medical team made breakthrough after breakthrough as they studied human physiology in ways never before attempted. Marcus's unique situation providing insights that would revolutionize xenobiology across the galaxy. His cellular structure showed remarkable adaptability and regenerative potential that defied conventional understanding of mammalian biology. The doctors began to suspect that humanity's rapid advancement wasn't just cultural, but biological as well. News of the conspiracy and its heroic disruption spread across galactic communication networks faster than light itself, carried by quantum entanglement transmitters that connected every civilized world. The story of a lone human engineer risking everything to protect an alien diplomat captured imaginations everywhere. Becoming a symbol of the cooperation and sacrifice that made galactic civilization possible, Marcus drifted in and out of consciousness as his body fought to repair damage that should have been fatal. His dreams filled with images of the ceremony and the moment when he chose to act rather than hide. The voices of his caregivers seemed to come from far away, speaking in languages he didn't recognize, but somehow understood through their tone of concern and dedication. Ambassador Lirelei refused to leave the medical bay despite her diplomatic obligations, using her authority to convert the space into a temporary embassy, where she could conduct urgent business while remaining near the human who had saved her life. Her bioluminescent patterns had shifted into configurations of deep gratitude and determination, emotions so powerful that they affected everyone around her. The investigation into the conspiracy revealed connections to anti-human movements throughout the galaxy, extremist groups who viewed humanity's rapid advancement as a threat to the established order. The evidence Marcus had gathered became the foundation for a massive security operation that would root out corruption and terrorism. Across dozens of star systems, Marcus's condition slowly stabilized as the alien medical technology adapted to work with human biology, creating hybrid treatment protocols that no single species could have developed alone. His recovery became a testament to the same kind of cooperation that the destroyed treaty had been meant to formalize, proving that unity made all people stronger than they could ever be in isolation. The delegates who had witnessed the attack chose to remain on the planet, rather than fleeing to safety, their presence becoming a demonstration of solidarity that impressed even the most cynical political observers. Representatives from 12 different species worked together to draft a new treaty that would be even stronger than the original, incorporating lessons learned from the conspiracy's attempted sabotage. Ambassador Martinez received authorization from Earth's government to negotiate a mutual defense pact with the Zephyrian Empire, the first military alliance between humanity and an alien civilization. The conspiracy's attempt to divide the species had instead brought them closer together, creating bonds of trust that would last for generations. Marcus opened his eyes to find himself surrounded by faces from across the galaxy, each species represented by medical professionals who had contributed to saving his life. The sight of former enemies working together to heal a single individual filled him with hope for the future of galactic civilization. His sacrifice had not been in vain. The new treaty signing took place in Marcus's medical bay, with the human engineer serving as witness from his recovery bed, while representatives of 12 species added their signatures to a document that explicitly condemned the kind of extremism and betrayal that had nearly destroyed their unity. The golden pen used for the ceremony had been crafted from materials donated by each participating world, including metal from Earth's moon. Ambassador Lirelei's first signature on the new treaty was followed by a formal declaration naming Marcus as the first recipient of the Galactic Medal of Unity, an honor that had never before been awarded to any individual. The recognition carried with it citizenship in every member world and the right to speak before the Galactic Council whenever he chose to do so. The conspiracy trials that followed became a turning point in galactic justice, establishing new protocols for investigating and preventing extremist infiltration of government institutions. Captain Zethros and his co-conspirators received sentences of exile to the galaxy's frontier regions, where they would spend the remainder of their lives building new settlements as payment for their crimes. Marcus's recovery took months, but he used the time to work with xenobiologists from multiple species to develop new hybrid technologies that combined the best aspects of human and alien engineering. His unique perspective as someone who had lived and worked alongside multiple civilizations made him an ideal bridge between different ways of thinking and problem-solving. The final treaty ceremony took place exactly 1 year after the attack, with Marcus standing proudly alongside Ambassador Lirelei as she signed the document that would bind their peoples together in friendship and mutual support. The scars from his injuries had faded, but the bonds forged in crisis would last forever. As the celebration continued into the night, Marcus looked up at the star-filled sky and thought about the future his actions had helped secure. The galaxy was vast and full of challenges, but he had learned that when beings of good will stood together against hatred and fear, no force in the universe could stand against them. The human capacity for sacrifice and determination had found its place among the stars, and the cosmos was better for it.